Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Day 5 of the Ontario Coaches Conference and today's session, Mindfulness for You and Your Athletes, Reducing Stress and Improving Performance. A few housekeeping items for you before we get started. This session will run until approximately 11:15 a.m. You may use the public session chat on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions that will be read aloud at the end of the presentation. If at any time you need assistance, you can contact the CAO team by using the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen that says Contact CAO, and a member of the CAO staff will get back to you. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for viewing within 24 hours from the Sessions tab. We are thrilled to be joined by two amazing presenters this morning to guide us through today's session. We first have Dr. Rachel Linville. She's a university professor with a doctorate in mindfulness research, an NCAA and NAIA coach, and also certified mental skills coach. In January 2019, Rachel was named a Presidential Scholar in recognition for her service to society and dedication to intellectual growth. Secondly, we have Erin McLeod. Erin is a professional athlete playing soccer for top teams around the world, including currently for the Orlando Pride, and is closing on 2 decades as a goalkeeper for the Canadian women's national team. She's a 2-time Olympian, including winning a bronze medal for Team Canada at the 2012 London Games. Together, they have co-founded the Mindful Project, a mindfulness curriculum created to empower students and athletes to reach their potential. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rachel Linville and Erin McLeod. Over to you.
All right, welcome. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday morning with us. We're excited to get started and just share this with you today. So thank you for your time and thank you for being here. Well, we already had a great introduction from Tash, but just kind of to give you a little bit more about myself. I've been a university professor for over 7 years, university soccer coach for 21, and a mental training consultant for over 10. She already mentioned my Doctor of Health Science, specific in research and mindfulness, and a master's degree in exercise science and sports psychology. I'm also a certified athletic trainer, and as she mentioned, a certified mental coach. And most of you already know my amazing business partner and co-founder, Erin McLeod. You know that, as mentioned, her bronze medal. She's also a part of the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. She's been a part of 4 FIFA Women's World Cups, 2 Olympic Games, and as already mentioned, still playing for Canada, which is very impressive to have such a long career. She's also a certified mental coach and certified meditation teacher. So you may ask yourself, why does this matter to you? And this is something as a professor. Here I am with my students on the screen. I always ask them when I'm teaching something, why does this matter to you? Because so often, if it doesn't matter to us, we don't really care and we don't actually make life change. And so that's my question to you. Why does our experience and our education matter to you? So here's my question for you to kind of start off this line of thinking. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you didn't have the right tools for the job? I think we've all been there at some point. And the reality is that the right tools for the job can make all the difference, right? So a story for me was, here I am about 6 years old, and I love to build things. So one evening I was kind of bored, so I went into the garage at my house, and I knew how to use a hammer, nails, and a handsaw. Those are the tools I had. And with those tools, I built this go-kart. And I don't know if you can tell, but I am incredibly proud of myself. Here I am with a finished project with my brother sitting at the wheel. I am so proud. And all in all, pretty good product for a 6-year-old with a hammer, nails, and a saw. However, if you look a little closer, my steering wheel isn't really attached to anything. My would-be headlights are juice can lids, and a few runs down the driveway, and that top's probably coming off. Now, my dad saw what I had built, and he obviously had more knowledge and more tools at hand, and he helped me build a more quality, longer-lasting go-kart that we had fun with as a family for years to come. So my point is that Erin and I are passionate about empowering others, and so we have intentionally sought out tools to be able to empower coaches and athletes. And so the right tools can allow you to perform at your best and also enable others to perform at their best. And none of you would have gone into coaching if you didn't care about athletes. And none of you would have gone into coaching if you weren't on some level about empowering others. And so what we want to do is add to the tools that you already have and you're doing great things with to allow you to even empower your athletes even more. So here we go. Let's talk first about stress and how it impacts performance. I don't know about you guys, but even pre-COVID, I was hearing my athletes, my students, other coaches, other people in my life just say, I am so stressed out. And that was pre-COVID, and let alone all of the stresses that everyone has faced with the COVID pandemic. So I'm sure it's no surprise that most often there's an inverse relationship when it comes to stress and performance, right? In general, when stress goes up, performance goes down and vice versa. So a little bit about my experience with this. This is a picture of me, and I'm the one with the rec specs, rocking those. And early in my high school basketball career, I was an athlete that would start off as a starter and have a strong performance. And then mid-season, I would hit this slump. And before I knew it, I was barely playing a few minutes a game. And I would be confused. I wouldn't know what happened. My coaches would even be confused. They didn't know what happened. What was impacting my performance? I went from being more of a star player to a bench player, and nobody could figure out why. And that's the reality, is that so many athletes and even coaches just don't understand why athletes get in these positions. And if we don't know how we got there, we can't improve. So the first thing for coaches in evaluating our athletes is actually knowing the symptoms. And clearly we are all too aware of the symptoms of COVID right now. So that's a really good way of looking at it, is we know that we're looking for certain things to say, maybe this is the COVID virus. So with that, what are the symptoms that lead to decreased performance? What can we be looking for in our athletes that could be leading to decreased performance? Well, one of those is negative self-talk. How do they speak about themselves? How do they speak about their mistakes and failure? Do they seem to express ruminating thoughts? Are they focusing on uncontrollables? Are they focusing on self-doubt? Or do they seem to have a big fear of failure? Do they compare themselves to others a lot? What does their mindset and perspective on things look like? Are they experiencing a lot of anger, depression, or apathy? These are all things that can lead to decreased performance. So you may look at that list, and that's a really big list. So you might think, where do I even start? Like, maybe I'm noticing these things in my athletes, but where do I even start? Well, it starts with self-evaluation, because just like anything, if we can't see it and fix it in ourselves, then we can't see it and fix it in our athletes. So this can kind of be a scary thing, but this is the root of helping others, is helping ourselves first. So when we talk about awareness, awareness begins with being present. And mindfulness is the first step towards awareness. So some of you might be more familiar with mindfulness. Some of you may have even been on sessions with me or others before on mindfulness. But for those of you that are maybe not as familiar with it, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment in a non-judgmental way. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and just kind of break it down. And we're actually going to use one of our Mindful Project cartoons to kind of talk about it a little bit more.
Welcome to the Mindful Project. Hi, this is Sid. Today, we're going to talk about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? It's learning how to notice what is going on around us. It's also about noticing what is going on inside our minds and our bodies. I'm hungry. I feel kind of tired. Do I smell funny? Whatever you're thinking. The important thing about mindfulness is to not judge those thoughts, but simply notice how they make you feel. It can help you feel better at school, or at sports, or at whatever it is you like to do. And when you're with your family and friends. With some practice, we think you'll really, really like it. So let's get started by taking a deep breath in for 3 seconds and exhale for 4. Thanks from your friends at the Mindful Project.
All right, so awareness is really looking at, like Sid was telling us, looking at noticing what we're thinking, noticing what we're feeling, just noticing what's going on around us. Essentially, it's paying attention. And how well do we actually do that? I think we all have so many things going on, things that we are having to manage at work, at home, outside of those. There's so many things that when we really look at it, how well are we actually able to do this? Well, I'm the research nerd with research here says that we actually only spend 30% of our thought in the past. We spend 60% of our thought in the future and only 10% in the present moment. Now, some of you may be surprised by that. Some of you may say, yeah, that probably makes sense. But let's talk about why that matters, because a lot of times we're always doing a lot of things at the same time, and we feel like we can be successful with that. And so we think, so what's the big deal? Well, let's see why does that matter. Research shows that we have a limited amount of attention. I liken it to what I call the attention box. And so we have this limited amount of attention, and we can't actually expand the amount of attention we have. We can only divide it. So we're actually going to do a little activity. Hopefully you have a pen or pencil and some paper handy. If not, go ahead and grab that. And we're going to kind of put this into practice so you can have an idea of why this matters. So once you have your pen and paper, hopefully you're able to grab something here. Go ahead and just draw a rectangle at the top of your paper, but leave room to write down below. And once you've done that, I want you to think about a skill that you have not yet perfected. Maybe it's something you've worked on for a really long time. Maybe it's something that you're working on that's kind of new, but maybe something that you feel like maybe a little frustrated about. You feel like you just quite haven't gotten it yet. So think about what that might be for you. And then close your eyes and imagine you're trying to perform this skill in front of people. I'll use the example for me of singing. I don't really think that I have perfected singing by any stretch of the imagination. So if I were to sing in front of a bunch of people, there would be a lot of thoughts that would come through my head. So go ahead, close your eyes, imagine this thing that you're trying to perform in front of a bunch of people, and just sit and notice the thoughts that enter your head in this scene. And as you notice all those thoughts that are coming through your head, go ahead and write them down on your piece of paper. All right, now that you have your thoughts down, count how many thoughts you have. I wrote down 6 thoughts. So count up how many thoughts you have and then divide your rectangle into that many different equal pieces. So I'm going to divide mine into 6. Like this. Now, look at those thoughts that you wrote down and evaluate and count which of these thoughts are related to the past or the future. For instance, for my singing example, I might say, they're never going to ask me to do this again. That would be a future. If I think I shouldn't have agreed to this, that would be a past. So just put a little check mark next to anything that's related to the past or the future. All right, and then look at the remaining thoughts and notice which ones, although might be in the present, aren't actually helping you perform the task. For instance, I could be thinking, if I'm on stage singing, I could think, I'm not very good at this. Well, that's in the present moment, but it's not helping me actually perform. So put a little check mark next to any of the things that fall in that category. And then count up the total number of check marks you have and shade in the corresponding number on your grid. So I have 4 check marks, so I'm going to shade in 4 of my grids. So my grid now looks like this. All right, so now kind of stepping back, evaluate how many of your boxes are shaded versus how many are not shaded. What's kind of that approximate percentage that you have left that actually allows you to perform your skill. So if you think about this, based on your attention box, if you were able to put your entire amount of attention into that performance, how do you think it would impact it? Now, some of you might say, oh, I'm not very good, so it wouldn't impact it at all. But if we're really honest, these different thoughts are still taking a part of our attention. And have we ever truly given that thing our full attention? Are we maybe fooling ourselves that we couldn't be better? I know that's happened with me, and I know that's happened with my athletes before, to where we are so sure we can't be better that we actually never give it our full attention to see if we could. So the reality is that all thoughts that are not helping you perform the task are taking a part of your attention, which essentially is taking a part of your chance to be successful. So you might be wondering, okay, how does mindfulness help with this? How does this all come together? Well, mindfulness reduces our stress by reducing fears about the past or the future. So if you were to look at your evaluation, if you look at the thoughts you had, if the ones from the past or the future were taken away, that increases your amount of attention. It also reduces fear of judgment. I don't know about you, but one of the things I wrote down had to do with judgment. So if I wasn't worried about people judging me, that frees up space in my head. It also improves our performance, like we kind of already said, is that putting our full attention into the task at hand actually gives us a chance for our best success and our best effort. Something to note, I think this is a common misconception with mindfulness. Obviously, mindfulness has been around forever, but has been coming up as more of a focus. And so I think something that maybe is misperceived is that intentionally focusing on the past or the future for the purpose of evaluation or planning is important and can be done mindfully. For instance, when Erin is working to improve her game, and you will hear all about that from her in a little bit, but she clearly spends a lot of time evaluating her previous performances on game film. And so she's looking to say, what did I do well? What do I need to adjust? She's trying to learn. And then preparing for the future. She's preparing intentionally for future matches. And that's the same thing with us as coaches. We need to learn from the past. We need to prepare for the future. But what does that look like? It is intentional if we're doing it mindfully. If we say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I am going to focus on, watching game film or learning from the past, looking at these things, or I'm going to intentionally spend time planning for the future, that's significantly different than letting our brains just run wild, right? When we have all of these thoughts that are just flooding, that we give our attention to, that are related to the past or the future, that's drastically different than doing those things mindfully and having them be an important part of our success. So you may be sitting there and saying, okay, but I'm a skeptic. And maybe you're not a skeptic because you actually showed up to this conference, but maybe you are. And what does the research say? Maybe you're a research person, maybe you're not. I am clearly a nerdy researcher, but I went into my doctoral degree a skeptic about mindfulness. And so I dug into the research for over 2 years and looked at thousands of research participants, looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of research and studies on all level of athletes, all level of adults in different various situations, at kids all the way down to 3 and 4 years old. And here's what I found. I was shocked that I found time and time and time again of the positive benefits of mindfulness over, like I said, thousands of research subjects. Mindfulness is shown to increase academic performance, self-confidence, focus, emotional control, resilience, coping, kindness, social skills, sleep quality, critical thinking skills, and athletic performance. Now, clearly, if we look at a lot of these things, they're very intertwined. So you could understand how a lot of these things would all improve because they are so closely related. It's also shown to reduce anxiety, including performance anxiety and test anxiety, fear of failure, depression, bullying, burnout, and perceived stress. So clearly, I'm no longer a skeptic, and my mind was changed a long time ago when the research was irrefutable. So maybe you might be thinking, okay, but now what? Well, mindfulness, or keeping the brain in the present moment, is ultimately helps reduce stress and increase performance because of that keeping our brain in that present moment, practicing getting our attention box full of our present moment actions. But how do you improve at it? Because I think all of us would probably feel like, I'm not very good at that. I have so many things going on in my brain all the time. So what can you do? Well, just like training your athletes, and you have them go through all the drills and all the scenarios, you have them do it over and over and over again, because you know that if they practice it, they will get better. And so that's all mindfulness is, it's training the brain. And you can train the brain the same way you would train the body. So let's start with a tiny little focus practice. So hopefully you still have that pen you used before. So go ahead and grab a pen or pencil or whatever you have near you. And we're going to try a focus exercise. So for 30 seconds, I want you to look at your pen or pencil and just notice as many things as you can about it. So mine has some texture differences. It has, it's getting towards the end of being full. It's got some words on it. Anything you could notice about that pen in that 30 seconds. And if your brain goes somewhere else, maybe start thinking about what else you have to do today, just bring it back to the pen. Just 30 seconds, okay? Ready? Here we go. All right, bringing our attention back here. Good. So some of you guys, maybe you had your brain go somewhere else and you had to bring it back. Some of you might have been able to focus on this the whole time, and that's great. But working on mindfulness can start as small as 30 seconds. And the first time I did an exercise like this early on, my brain actually bounced around several times. Now I'm able to keep it easily on the pen, but it comes from training. And the thing is a lot of times people think that mindfulness practice would be trying to think about nothing, trying to get rid of all of our thoughts. But really, it's just narrowing them in on what we're doing. It's actually looking at the pen, not just staring at it, but actively saying, oh, look at all these different parts. It's a very active process. So I mentioned just noticing that your brain goes and comes back and bringing it back. Noting is a really important tool when it comes to mindfulness. So noting when your brain is not in the present is actually a really huge first step, because we can't really make anything better if we don't notice it. So instead of being upset that your brain is somewhere else, just saying, oh, I noticed that, and just bring it back to what you're working on. So an important thing about noting is knowing what it is and what it is not. So noting is observing thoughts and feelings, noticing that you're feeling a certain way, noticing that your brain has gone somewhere else. It's not judging those thoughts and feelings. With my athletes and with my clients, a lot of times I say it's the difference between seeing a swimming pool and jumping into the swimming pool. You can walk by and say, oh, look, there's a swimming pool there. You can observe it without diving in. And that's sometimes with our thoughts, we get so involved and wrapped up that it's similar to diving into a swimming pool or jumping in versus just saying, oh, I noticed that that is there. I notice my brain keeps going to the things I have to do today. Okay, you can set those aside and come back to the present moment. So what should we note? You're noting, okay, noting where your thoughts go, but more specifically, what can we notice about our thoughts? Because just like early on when I said I didn't know what to do to fix my performance as a high school basketball player, and my coaches didn't know what to do to fix that, we can't fix things if we don't know what's going on and we don't know what's there. So noticing when your thoughts are going somewhere, what kind of thoughts are they? Are they rumination? Are they negative self-talk? Is something taking a lot of our attention that's commonly taking it versus what we're trying to work on? Are fears taking our attention? Is a certain mindset or maybe emotional reactions? Does a certain emotional reaction grab our attention consistently? Those are things kind of to note. And again, this is about just kind of objectively looking at it from the outside, because it's really hard to deal with it if we're not being objective. So we've talked about kind of awareness and noting and all of these things and just the importance of it, because once we become aware, we can effectively actually do something about it, right? We can actually take action. But in reality, noting can feel kind of scary at first, because you might be like, oh, wow, I noticed that my brain is going to this a lot and I don't know why, and I don't really like that. Or I noticed that I'm really stressed about this thing. But just remember that you don't have to figure it out all at once. It is a process. And just learning to note things is a huge win, because again, if we can't see it, we can't do anything about it. So just start with noting. It is actually really huge, and just it will take time, and that's okay. So as you're implementing mindfulness into your life, what else can you do besides noting? Well, focusing on the breath is a really huge aspect of mindfulness. And the reason why is because focusing on the breath can help bring our brain back to the present moment, because the breath is always in the now. So focusing on breathing in for 3 seconds and out for 4 seconds actually physiologically activates the parasympathetic nervous system and calms the body down. It can be used anytime, anywhere. It was great. Last weekend, I was watching one of our teams, one of our clients for the Mindful Project perform, and there was a really big moment in the performance. And I saw one of our athletes go, and that small thing can make such a massive difference. You'll see pro athletes doing it. You see music performers. You see anyone going on stage that has been doing this a lot. You will often see that because it physiologically calms the body down. And our heart rate is kind of an amazing thing. When our heart rate jumps above 120, we actually can't think quite as clearly. When it goes above 140, even less cognitive ability. So lowering that heart rate down helps us be calm, helps us think more clearly, make better decisions. And a note about this as well is that it also helps us be more objective. I'm sure we all have been in a position to where we jump to something, can anger or reaction, and when we calm down, we're able to be more objective and make a better decision about that thing. So something to note is that breathing with the chest actually creates shorter, more stressful breathing patterns, where breathing with the belly allows more calm and relaxed breathing. And Erin is actually going to lead us in some guided breathing towards the end of this session, so you guys will enjoy that. So just to review our tools, we talked about noting, we talked about focusing on the breath. Those are two really great tools for practicing mindfulness. One more thing to add to your toolbox is self-compassion. And this is a really tough one for a lot of people. A lot of us are just kind of wired not to show ourselves self-compassion. And that's a lot of times because we think that being hard on ourselves will improve our performance. But in reality, research shows that being hard on ourselves does not actually improve performance. However, constructive evaluation is very, very different from being hard on ourselves. We can constructively evaluate and make changes without just being hard on ourselves for the sake of being hard on ourselves. So self-compassion is about acknowledging where you are without judgment. And this allows you to focus on moving forward. Because remember, our effectiveness comes from where we put our attention. Imagine making a mistake, especially for your athletes, during a performance. If they make a mistake and they take time to be hard on themselves, you're probably yelling from the sidelines, get back in there, keep going. But how often do we do that as well? We take that time to be hard on ourselves instead of just going to what's next. So things that can be important with self-compassion is just noting what we're saying to ourselves and just kind of rewording how we speak to ourselves. Again, you can kind of notice, is this actually objective and beneficial, or am I just being hard on myself? So we have a little Mindful Project video to talk about this a little bit more.
Welcome to the Mindful Project. Hello and welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about self-compassion and self-talk. Traditionally in sports, whether it's in movies or your own experience, society often creates an expectation for high performers to be very hard on themselves. But as previously mentioned, research shows that being hard on ourselves does not improve our performance. And it also shows that practicing self-compassion actually increases sport performance. Self-compassion starts by acknowledging that it takes vulnerability and courage to try new things and make mistakes. Self-compassion can also help us look more objectively at our mistakes and be able to learn from them more effectively. In discussing self-compassion, it is also important to address self-talk. Did you know that we say as many as 4,000 words a minute to ourselves? So, what we are saying to ourselves is very important. Research shows that those who speak positively to themselves are more successful. Self-talk is a habit, so it is important to first notice how you have been speaking to yourself. One way you can do this is by listening to the self-talk guided relaxation in our library. If you notice you have been using negative self-talk, you can start retraining your brain to speak more positively. This doesn't mean that you stop self-evaluating. But instead, it means you objectively evaluate yourself using kind and positive language. Sometimes the changes can be very small. For example, instead of saying, "I'm never going to get this," you can say, "I haven't gotten this yet." If you notice you are using negative self-talk in your evaluation or as part of your motivation, it may take some time to create new positive habits, but just like with anything, the more you practice it, the easier it will become. Sometimes athletes think that they can only be motivated by negative self-talk. However, those athletes don't know how successful they could be with positive self-talk. It is important to remember that our brains have an amazing ability to believe themselves. This means that if we criticize ourselves, we will start to believe what we are saying, and our performance will suffer. But if we believe in ourselves and speak positively to ourselves, then our performance will improve. In the words of Canadian two-time Olympic gold medalist Jonathan Towles, You become what you think about and focus on the most. Thoughts and desires in your mind can become a reality. Self-talk and self-compassion are completely within your control. You and you alone control how you think about and speak to yourself. Check out Session 1 PDF after today's guided relaxation, and we will continue to work on these areas together. But first, let's focus on our breathing. Take in a deep breath for 3 seconds and exhale for 4. Thank you from your friends at the Mindful Project.
And this excerpt comes from our high performance program. So it's referencing things that are in our high performance program, but we actually have included the PDF the PDF worksheet that it is mentioning as a download from today. So we actually have 2 downloads for you with today's session. So make sure you check those out after the session is over. So as we talk about self-compassion, it's really about perspective, right? And I think we all know this, but it still can be kind of tough. And especially when it comes to dealing with mistakes, because I think a lot of times that's the hardest time we have dealing with self-compassion. And dealing with mistakes is really about perspective as well. And so when we evaluate our relationship with mistakes, if we view them as a bad thing, if we view failure as a bad thing, then we miss opportunities to learn and grow. If we can change our relationship with mistakes to realize that there are growth opportunities and realize that fear of failure or mistakes is actually the #1 inhibitor of success. Because essentially, when we fear failure, where are we putting our attention? We're putting it into failure. So it's essentially just taking us to the thing that we are most afraid of. And so instead of failing to grow, we are so afraid of failing that we don't even get close. And you probably have observed this in your athletes as well, which we'll talk about a little bit in a couple minutes here. But our perspective can change everything, because what we believe to be true about stress, mistakes, and failure determines whether they help or hinder us. So one of the other tools that we want to offer you today is dealing with rumination. And that's a really big thing when it comes to thoughts and mindfulness. It can feel like sometimes we have these thoughts. Maybe it has to do with fears about the past or the future. Maybe it has to do with past mistakes or fears of repeating a mistake. And a lot of times those thoughts can just go round and round and round in our heads like a merry-go-round or a Ferris wheel. It can almost drive us insane. And the thing with rumination is that you can actually note and acknowledge that a thought is there, but put your attention into something in the present. Because so often we spend so much time and energy trying to stop that thought that we just keep thinking about it. Imagine that something is coming towards you, a huge wall or a boulder, and you're trying to get it to go away. You can't really think about anything else. So same thing with ruminating thoughts. If we put all of our attention into stopping them and making them go away, then we actually just keep thinking about it. So just like if bubbles were floating in front of you, you could either let your attention go on the bubbles, or you can notice that the bubbles are floating by, but keep your attention on whatever you're doing in the present moment. So it's not about stopping the thought, it's just controlling where you put your attention. It's not about not thinking about it either. You just say, okay, yeah, that's there, and then just keep going on about your way. Put your focus into something in the present moment. So just like with anything, the more you work on it, the more you will improve. It's not something that just goes away like that, right? It's a common thing that a lot of people struggle with, but that doesn't mean you can't get better at it with practice. It's just noticing it. Notice when it's there, intentionally put your attention into something else, something in the present. So, and remember, what you believe about your ability to improve is directly correlated with your potential for success. If you don't think you can overcome it, then you won't. You have to believe you can overcome something to be able to actually have the chance to be successful at it. So if we kind of look at the tools we've gained, noting is one, focusing on the breath, self-compassion, controlling our attention when ruminating, like where we put our attention, are the tools that we have talked about today to kind of add to your toolbox. So how do you pass those along to someone else? Ultimately, it just starts with the little things. I'm going to give you some things to kind of start with your athletes. So some of the small things are just changing your verbiage on failure. So if they're saying, I can't get this, I'm never going to get this, help them learn the phrase, you haven't gotten it yet, just not yet. Focus on praising the process, praise their effort. If you are only praising the outcome, that's where that continues that fear of failure model. They're afraid to try it if they're not going to get it. So praising the process, praising the effort can make a massive difference with your athletes. Practicing breathing exercises with them, the in for 3, the out for 4. Erin is going to take you through some breathing exercises that you can practice with your teams and with your athletes. And then also teaching what I'm calling focus practice, essentially practicing mindfulness, but it can maybe be easier thought of sometimes as a focus tool. So some focus practice ideas, and this is going to depend on the age of your athletes. You might choose a few different things for your older athletes or different things for your younger athletes, but just timing them for 30 seconds and saying, what can they notice about an object? So maybe it's your hockey stick, maybe it's your skate, maybe it's a soccer ball or a baseball or whatever it is. What can they notice about 30 seconds? Just like we did with the pen. And that's actually a really great thing to do at the beginning of a training, because when you come into training, their brains have come from school, they've come from life events, whatever it is, it can be hard to get them to focus. So starting at the beginning with a focus tool like this will actually help them bring their brains in to be ready for what you are going to tell them. So they're going to be better, and it's going to be easier for you because their brains are now on the same things. You also can have them close their eyes and for 30 seconds notice how they feel. It's also great to do this as a group activity. So they do that for 30 seconds and then they share with the person next to them. What did they notice? What can they hear in 30 seconds? Close your eyes. What do you hear? Or how many blue things can you find? And again, this is obviously, they're doing it, not talking. And then at the end of the 30 seconds, they can share it with teammates around them. And I have actually done stuff like this even with college athletes, as far as maybe it sounds a little bit silly, but they get into it and they actually start to really appreciate it because they know that it helps bring their brain and they're more focused and ready for that training session. So the reality is that mindfulness increases confidence in all ages, and confidence is key when empowering others, because helping athletes change their perspective on mistakes and failure and reducing fear of judgment, reducing fear of the past or the future makes them so much more confident, not just in their sport, but in school and in life. So last but not least, we all know this, but it just bears reminding all of us, right? Is that notice how you talk to yourself. They're watching us. If we are negative with ourselves, they see that. What are you praising? They see if you're only praising the winning team. They see if you're only praising the best athletes. How do we respond to personal failure or mistakes? If we mess up on something, how are we responding? They watch that. How do you handle uncertainty? Do we let ourselves worry about the past and the future, in the conversations we have with them? Or do we help bring the focus back to what we can actually control, what is going on right now? So with all of this, I know it's a lot of information. And again, we're trying to say that just even doing small things can make a really big difference, just like exercise or diet nutrition, right? If you go on a new diet and try to go cold turkey on something, sometimes it's hard to keep up with. Or an exercise program, you go from zero, to working out 7 days a week, 2 hours a day, probably not going to stick with it. Which is where we're suggesting just these small changes can make a really big difference. The most important thing is consistency. So if you're incorporating small things consistently into your training sessions and into your own life, it can have a big, long-lasting impact, just like small diet or exercise changes can make a big difference, actually. So change takes time, but research with our athletes and our teams has showed significant improvements in stress, anxiety, quality of life in just 6 weeks. And this is actually true throughout research across the board. People are noticing that they feel better, they mentally feel better, they're more focused in just 2 weeks. So the reality is that these little changes can have a massive difference. So remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. Just little changes, be patient, trust the process, and breathe. I'm going to turn it over to Erin now. She has so many real life applications of this. She has had incredible results and an incredible career and continues to have an incredible career. And a lot of this comes from her practice of mindfulness and how these concepts have really changed her life. So Erin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. I do that exercise every time, the attention box. I just absolutely love it. I'm also 38 years old, so I have probably way too much experience. But I wanted to first start with a few things that really have helped me throughout my career. And mindfulness has had a huge impact on the field for me, but also off the field. And I was having a conversation with my sports psychologist the other day with the national team. And he made a good point that one thing that is always present is our bodies, whether that is, for me, it's always been the breath is something that I've come back to, but our senses, our heart rate, these are things that in these huge moments, we can connect to immediately and kind of come back to our bodies. So as Rachel mentioned, the beauty of breath and slowing our breathing lowers our heart rate. It slows everything down. This is when we make better decisions, and we're calmer, more patient, more loving too. And for me, in these big moments in my career, if we're getting ready for a free kick, that's when I take my big breath in and out, calm down, whether it's before a penalty shot, these big game moments, I take a moment, I take that breath. So I'm in the best situation possible to make great decisions. So we're actually going to go through a bit of a breathing exercise together. Bear with me. I have a feeling like my life has gotten more and more hectic over the years. And as coaches, I'm sure you are juggling a lot of things. And we very rarely just take a moment literally to breathe. So I'm going to ask you if you're sitting down or if you're standing, I like to call it getting grounded. I'd like you to find contact with the ground with your feet. See if you can notice your toes touching the ground. Okay, just try and just get comfortable where you are, kind of just slow down. Now, what I want you to do is take a massive inhale, okay? So together, let's just take one really big breath in and out. Okay, so I want you to do it one more time, and I want you to notice whether you go up or if you go out when you breathe, okay? So one more time, breathe in and breathe out. So when Rachel was speaking, she talked a little bit about breathing from the belly. If you ever notice a baby breathing, their bellies go up and down, right? As we get older, we start breathing from our chest, shallow little breaths that don't help as much, and it creates a lot of tension. Our diaphragms were built for breathing, right? So, everyone kind of says like tuck in your gut all the time, but we need to let the bellies loose. They're really important for breathing. And like I mentioned, I like to really connect with the senses because it helps to bring me back to the moment. And as much as you can, try to breathe in and out of your nose. It really helps to slow down your breathing. And actually, our bodies are incredible, obviously. But every time we breathe through our nose, our sinuses release something called nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. So it's essentially the muscles within our blood vessels relax when we breathe in and out of our nose. So our blood moves freer, more efficiently throughout our body, and it lowers our blood pressure just by breathing through your nose. So we are going to do together, hopefully you're game for this, 3 rounds of breathing of 3 breaths. We were going to first focus on touch, and then sound, and then vision. Okay, so these are all techniques I've used throughout my career. So the first round, I want you to put one hand on your belly. Okay, I want you to try and breathe in and out of your nose. I'll do the 3 and 4 count like we talked about. So you're going to breathe in for 3. As you breathe in, feel your belly expand against your hand, and then exhale for 4. Okay, that's 1. And again, breathe in. Feel that belly expand and exhale. feel it empty. And then one more time, breathing in, feel that belly expand, and then exhale for 4. Amazing. Okay, the next round, all I want you to do, okay, you can relax your hands if you want. I just want you to focus on the sound the air makes as it goes in and out of your nose. Okay, so here we go. In for 3, out for 4, 2, 3, 4. And again, breathe in for 3, 3, and out for 4. Awesome. Last time, listen to the sound of the air. In for 3 and out for 4. Okay, now you're doing amazing. Last round, you're going to work on expanding your vision as you breathe. So this is a tactic I actually use in a lot of games, because when you broaden your vision like this, it actually has a calming effect on your brain. Again, better for decision making. Okay, so just want you to again be relaxed. Okay, inhale for 3 seconds. As you inhale, try to see as much as you can in front of you. Okay, so inhale for 3, 3, and exhale for 4. Now expand as much as you can. See as much as you can now for 3 seconds. In and exhale for 4. See if you can see out of your peripherals. Okay, last round. See if you can see the ceiling and the floor and the side to side. In for 3 and out for 4. Awesome. So that's something that you can do. I don't know if you feel any better. I feel a little zenned out. I'm also aware of the time, so I'm going to go to the next thing. But in game scenarios, I do a quick in for 3 and out for 4, and then I'm set and ready for the next pressure moment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my career. We only have 15 minutes left, so there's not enough time because I'm 38 years old. However, I just wanted to highlight a few points that Rachel has already spoken about. I've kind of like learned everything the hard way. So we've put a lot of intention into the high performance program. So hopefully our young athletes don't have to go through what some of us went through. But for me, if I look back at my career, where I have felt the most success is where I feel free. And being in the zone is something it's my favorite place to be, whether I'm on the field or drawing or doing art. I love being in that place. And if you look at the definition of mindfulness, to me, it is one and the same with being in the zone. So that's how, for me, it really applies as an athlete, because you're in the moment, you're objective, you're not worrying about the past or the future. And that is a wonderful place to be, great for your decision making, for your calmness. So that's why mindfulness has really just changed everything for me on the field and unintentionally off the field as well. So I'm glad I'm talking to a bunch of Canucks today, because when I referenced Elizabeth Manley in 1988, you guys might actually know what I'm talking about. So that's when I fell in love with the Olympic dream. I was 5 years old, watching it, in front of the TV with my whole family, all bawling our eyes out as she had a wonderful performance. But what I remember distinctly from that moment in time was the commentators talking about her having this flawless, perfect performance. And I think as high performers, we get obsessed with being perfect, which can be this mental trap. I remember in 2007, now I know you guys talked with Karina LeBlanc earlier this week. She is a total boss. I love her so much. But in 2007, 3 days before the big tournament, the Women's World Cup in China, she got injured. So I got thrown into the game and ended up having a wonderful tournament. We didn't do well as a team, unfortunately, but the coach sat me down and literally said, "Erin, I think you're going to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world." And because I'm so competitive, I was actually angry about that comment, because I didn't want to be one of the best. I wanted to be the best. And because I had made up in my mind that the best meant, like Elizabeth Manley, you had to be flawless and perfect, how I approached mistakes was pretty brutal. I was totally unforgiving. My self-talk was so harsh, to the point that just 1 year later, I'm at the 2008 Olympics. You know, I'm literally passing LeBron James in the cafeteria, being like, "Hey, what's up, LeBron?" I did that, but that's an embarrassing story for another day. Anyway, and I'm at the highlight, you know, like the best athletes in the world are there. And I am scared out of my mind to step onto the field because I can't deal with the mental agony that I was putting myself through. So I ended up tearing my ACL that tournament. And it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise because I realized I worked too hard to hate the sport that much. It didn't make sense. So I started looking at my mindset and how I approached mistakes. So I had this one really pivotal conversation with one of my sports psychologists at the time. And like I mentioned before, I love art, right? I'm an art enthusiast. I started with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Wayne Gretzky, Canadian to the core. And so that was my escape most of the time. So we're sitting there and he's, you know, we're talking about my obsession with mistakes. And he says, well, what happens when you make a mistake in art? And I kind of like, I'm like, what? I'm like, there are no mistakes in art. You like paint over it, you try a different technique. Sometimes the mistakes are the most beautiful part of the piece. And he's like smiling ear to ear at this point, you know, and I'm like, I haven't quite caught up. And in this moment, I realize that I have decided how I see mistakes in my sport, my whole career, and that I actually have a choice in how I see mistakes, and that I had this fixed mindset. So this was really pivotal. But then almost coincidentally, I came across Dr. Carrie Evans, who is the sports psychologist for the New Zealand All Blacks. This man is like 7 foot tall, bald. He used to play for the New Zealand men's national soccer team. And his like life motto, I'm not kidding, is presence comes from being present in the moment. I was like, this is my guy. So when he joined us right before the 2012 Olympics, about a year out, and he's sitting with me and he was like, we're going to go, you know, the first step to change is awareness. You know, I'm like kind of arrogant at this point. I'm like, you know, what do I need to change? So we're in training one day and he's like, I just want you to notice your tone when you're giving communication. And I'm kidding you not. I'm like, someone's on your left, someone's on your right. You got to get up, down, down, down. There's pressure, there's pressure. And my tone was exactly the same, like danger stress mode the entire time. And he turns to me and he goes, you think anybody can hear you? And that was the first thing. And then the second thing was, he was like, I need you to start like expanding your vision, like we talked about before. He's like, see everyone on your left and on your right. Give communication and notice how your body feels. So he kind of put me through this like self-awareness course, which was incredible. But then I was kind of like, okay, now that I'm very aware, like I want to put these mindfulness practices like into play. My obsession with mistakes, I was aware, was like the attention box keeping me in the future and in the past. And I wanted to know how to be in the present. You know, so I'm total geek. I've got my pen out, I've got my soccer journal, and I'm like, you know, how do I get in the present moment? Tell me everything. And he's like, breathe in for 3 and out for 4. I'm like, yeah, no. But like, what do you tell the New Zealand All Blacks in the heat of the moment, like these big moments? He's like, yeah, I tell them to breathe in for 3 and out for 4. And like, I can't believe it, right? And the counting disrupts the rumination and like keeps you from, you know, whatever that thought is going on and on and on. It just brings you to the counting, to the moment. And then as Rachel said, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So this one simple action gets you into the moment, gets you thinking more clearly. So I started using this technique like immediately, and it changed the way that I approached everything. I was calmer. I became way more objective, and I actually enjoyed every moment. I was smiling like every game. And that was the first time in my career that I was smiling in games. And like Rachel said, I became more objective, and I would analyze my video. I would take the learnings from it, and I would just move forward. So I know there's been a lot of questions, and I want to get to them. So I guess the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about was just my relationship with stress. And I know all of you are coaches, and you know, as players, we always talk about, like, you know, if we could coach, we would do it this way and this way. But I think authentic leadership really goes a long way, and self-awareness. I was reading the Harvard Business Review the other day on authentic leadership, and self-awareness is the #1 trait for all these successful leaders. But what I've realized is to encourage the effort, obviously, and the attitude, but addressing nerves, like head on, talking to your athletes about being nervous. Everyone is different when it comes to this, but for me, I've always been a nervous athlete. I was one listening to like pump up music before games, and then I was nervous, and then I was like, I couldn't even like catch a ball by the time I got to the game. And so years ago, around 2015, some of you may have watched the Women's World Cup, where we were averaging over 50,000 spectators a game. So you can believe that I was nervous every single game, but I would get this like tension in my neck, butterflies in my stomach consistently. And instead of thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing, you know, like stress gets a really bad rap. Like at the end of the day, it's our fight or flight mode, right? We are getting prepared for this next, whatever it is. So I just started telling myself that, you know, the stress was just helping me perform at my best. And then I came across this awesome TED Talk. I highly recommend it, by Kelly McGonigal, excuse me, How to Make Stress Your Friend. If you believe that stress is good for your like physical, mental preparation, then you have a different physiological response. Your blood vessels stay open, the blood flow stays the same, so you can stay calmer, your muscles are getting the blood they need. And if you believe that stress is bad, your blood vessels actually constrict, and you don't get as much blood to your muscles or your brain. So as an athlete, this is like totally detrimental, could be, to your performance. So these are just small things. As coaches, you know, and the last thing I'm going to say, because I want us to have a couple of minutes for questions, is Rachel addressed mistakes. We all deal with mistakes in the self-talk. I agree with all of that. But for me, the most rewarding environments that I've ever been in are the ones where the effort is applauded. And just like when we talk to ourselves and we're hard on ourselves on making mistakes, and that actually slows our learning, it's the same with coaching. When I've had a coach applaud my effort, even if I've made a mistake, then I know that I can do anything in that environment, that I'm limitless. And I think as a coach, one day, and you know, I'm older than all my coaches, so I feel like I'm coaching a lot. That's the one thing that when you create an environment like that, anything really is possible. So I'm going to, Eric, I think I'm giving it back to you for questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Not Eric, but Natasha. That's all good.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Yeah, thank you both. That was a great session. We've been getting a lot of great feedback throughout the chat and a bunch of great questions. To the audience, we now have some time for questions. So you can use that session chat box on the right-hand side of your screen now. But to start off, we have a question from Bernard here. With mental health issues being so prevalent, when should we stop encouraging an athlete to focus on mindfulness and recommend he or she seek professional help?
I would say that that is a really, really great question, because mindfulness obviously doesn't just cure everything. It's not, you know, there are definitely real mental health issues out there where a medical professional may use mindfulness as a tool in it, but that doesn't mean that sometimes there's not you know, more needed in terms of medication or other things. So I would dare say, if you are having that question in your mind and saying, ooh, maybe I should have them refer them to a medical professional, I think that's your gut saying, yes, refer them to a medical professional. Because even with our programs, we're an educational resource, and we are not trying to at all replace medical professionals when it comes to mental health. So I think, again, with your gut, if you're feeling like this seems like there's more going on here than just where they're putting their attention, maybe there's more stuff going on at home, you're kind of giving them some tools, but it seems like there's a much bigger thing going on. I think that's your cue. So I hope that is helpful.
No, awesome. Thank you. Another question here from Mike. What if the source of distraction is a traumatic event, like parents getting divorced, cyberbullying, death in a family, diagnosis of a terminal illness, etc.?
I think with that, I'm guessing that their time with you is their time to kind of get away from that. And so I think with the traumatic event, again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't go to counseling, because clearly if there's a traumatic event going on, then I would be recommending that they go to counseling. But when they are there with you, it's that opportunity to set that aside and say, yes, this is going on in your life, but right now you get to focus on your sport, and help them. Training them to be mindful while they're in their sport can give them that outlet that sports so often are. And so, again, we are not at all saying counseling shouldn't be involved, because clearly with a really traumatic event, counseling is a big part of that. But when you have them with you, mindfulness can really help them focus on the training session and give them that break that they drastically need from everything else that's going on in their life.
Thank you. I think this one might be something Aaron can answer as well, but it's another one from Mike, and he's asking, what are your thoughts on imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I think it's a real thing. Rachel and I have conversations about confidence, and recently I was in camp. And I had the same thing, like, do I deserve to be here? I've been out of the program for a year and a half. I think it's natural to have these thoughts. So the same that I would go like back to our presentation, like we cannot control the thoughts that come in and out of our head. So the imposter syndrome, do I deserve to be, all these things, but putting the attention into the ones that you want. I saw this the other day. A belief is a thought that you intentionally repeat. And for me, I thought that was absolutely wonderful, because I get into a lot of the comparison, negative rumination, a lot of these things. But I catch myself and then start putting attention into the things that serve me. So I think imposter syndrome just comes from, your confidence kind of going up and down, skill level, all these things. And for me, I find the tool of being in the moment helps me the most, because a lot of these thoughts come from worrying about the future and the past. So I kind of feel like when I'm in the zone, and kind of even the last question, like when you can exist in the moment, it's kind of like this this wonderful, comforting place. I hope that answers that question. Rachel, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Thank you. One from Allison here. I've read that in positive self-talk, you should use your name versus I. Can you tell me what your research indicates what is best?
I think when it comes to using your name versus I, it kind of makes it a little bit more objective. And that's kind of a lot of times that stepping back and looking at it objectively, it's a tool that can definitely help with that objectivity. I think there's an element of personal preference there. For me, I'm much more confident referring to myself as I, but for some people, the reusing their name can really help with that. So there's research, I think, that supports both, but the research side of using the person's name really kind of can increase objectivity and make it almost feel like it's coming from the outside, which can be helpful for some people.
I just wanted to add one thing. Sorry, that's kind of along the same lines as one thing that I really learned. I know there were some questions about emotions as well earlier on. And I think when it comes to what has helped me is, instead of saying like, I am angry, saying I feel angry, like creating a bit of a separation, so you're not like an angry ball, like you're experiencing this emotion. The more we can kind of create that space, kind of also acknowledges that we have a little bit more control, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I think we have time to squeeze in one more question here. This one's from Philip. How long would it take for an adult versus a youth versus a junior to use this and to start to see some improvement? And is this something after we've awakened from this self-help, can these individuals continue on their own?
Yes, I would say that the research actually shows that in all ages, a difference very, very quickly, and as little as 2 weeks up to that 3, 4, 5, 6 week range. But in all ages, again, I've looked at a lot of different ages, a lot of different demographics, and if with regular practice, and regular practice being that, 3 days a week minimum of incorporating something regard to mindfulness, is seeing a difference in 2 weeks, but really seeing that difference at that 6 week mark. And as far as things to take with them, long term, that's really where we're trying to say, like, creating just like healthy habits with, with eating and exercise. It's the same thing. You're giving them tools in their sport that you want them to be able to take no matter how long they play the sport. You're doing the same thing with this. So it's not intended to be something that's like, okay, this is a fad right now. I know it can come across like that, but it's really retraining the brain. And when we retrain the brain, it's like practicing a physical skill. We retrain, we create a motor program physically. We're essentially creating that motor program in our brain of retraining the way we talk to ourselves and the way that we think. And by doing that, then it's something that could actually be long lasting, that they can take with them and apply to every area of life, not just sport. Erin, I don't know if you have something you want to add on that.
I do have something to add. Not the same though, because I know we're getting a lot of questions about actually like in-game moments. So the wonderful thing about mindfulness is when you start putting more attention into your thoughts, like Rachel said with the pen exercise, you start realizing when a thought comes into play, and it's that moment where you acknowledge, oh, I'm having a thought. That's so important, because then once you realize that, you can create tools to help bring you back to the moment. So for me in games, the breath for me is a reset. But I know some people, for example, like some people might have an elastic around their wrist, and if they get caught in a thought, they're in the middle of a play, they just like snap the elastic and they're back to the moment. So I definitely encourage that. Like I said, with the senses, there's different ways you can, like, in game, find yourself getting back to the moment. But I think the work that you can do off the field or off the court or whatever sport is starting to catch yourself drifting, because then you can come back and, like Rachel said, it is really a focus practice. And as far as, like, I've been doing a lot of mindfulness since about 2012, and we just played an inner squad yesterday, and I'm in the zone for basically 90 minutes the entire time. And because I practice mindfulness more and more often, it just becomes more accessible. Because if I do drift, and it's totally normal, like I'm in the zone for that amount of time, but I'm like, I feel something and then I'm like, okay, back to the breath or my vision, or I have a few anchors that continually bring me back. Because at the end of the day, people are like, meditation and all this mindfulness, like that means like you're thinking of nothing, which actually for me, that's not the truth. The truth is you're having these thoughts, you're aware of them, and then you're coming back to the moment.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was a great session. We've been getting great feedback the whole time. And for our audience members, you can see we dropped Erin and Rachel's contacts in there for you as well. We know a lot of people have been asking about that. So Erin and Rachel, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for attending. The next session of OCC21 takes place tomorrow. And we have 3 sessions for you starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The first one is Building a Team for Success, Mastering the Art of Team Cohesion. As a reminder, if you've missed a past session, recordings are available for March 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th sessions, and you can find them inside each session tab. Be sure to also take advantage of the networking tab from the left side of your menu, where you can make new friends all across Canada. You can send private messages, start a video call, and form your own group discussion. Thank you again, Rachel and Erin, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow for day 6. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.